This is World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment with your host, Carl Gruber. World Awakenings is a podcast dedicated to opening your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that the world's population is now, more than ever, awakening to all things metaphysical and spiritual, and just how they play an all-important role in our daily life. So join Carl on this enlightening experience as he interviews metaphysical and spiritual experts to discuss, debate, and delve deeply into the hows and whys of this worldwide awakening.
The Center for Radiant Well-Being is your well-being and workout studio right in your home. Join us for mainstream exercises like sculpting, light weights, abs, and arms, and also join us for higher energy classes. It's movement and exercises, but with an energetic focus, like Reiki, imagery, and imagination. We'll also bring you great guest speakers and special guests with expertise in everything well-being. To see updates for the grand opening, go to the Center for Radiant Wellbeing Facebook page or email centerforradiantwellbeing@gmail.com or text 757-323-5558. That's 757-323-5558. It's time for your personal radiance to shine its light. Don't miss their grand opening this month.
We welcome you to the World Awakenings podcast. Before we start, we'd like to tell you about a special ebook written by the show's host, Carl Gruber. The 3 Pillars, a simple 3-step process to manifest positive and permanent change in your life. The concise 32-page 3 Pillars ebook will teach you how to become a successful and consistent co-creator of your life path with the law of attraction. Yes, you can manifest the life you truly desire, and the ebook is absolutely free. Simply go to Carl's website, carlgruberlifecoach.com. That's KARLGRUBER lifecoach.com. Click on the header title About Me and get the free download today. Carl Gruber's free ebook, The 3 Pillars, will positively change your life.
Broadcasting from high atop planet Earth, this is the podcast, World Awakenings. Hi, I'm your show's host, Carl Gruber, and today marks the 3rd time on the show for my featured guest. And in this episode 29 of World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment, we talk with a guy known as the Attract Money Guru, James Goy Jr. He's the best-selling author of the internationally published How to Attract Money Using Mind Power, a book that truly set a new standard for concise, no-nonsense, straight-to-the-point self-help books. And that was first published in 2007, a game-changing book that continues to transform lives around the world. Plus, James has had a number of other books he's written, most notably The Supernatural Power of Thought, one of my favorites, and his latest, The New Normal. James is also an advanced mind power practitioner, a natural-born astral traveler, an experienced lucid dreamer, and he's had life-changing encounters with both angels and demons, and also has encountered people who've passed on, and he is the grateful recipient of an inordinate amount of life-saving divine intervention. Like I said, you are not bored, James. That's quite a bio you have there.
Yeah, well, the phrase "never a dull moment" kind of, is suitable for me, I think.
Yeah. And it's great that you could come on. And I mentioned, I should mention, in the bio, I did say that this is the 3rd time you've been on this podcast. The very first one, you actually were kind enough to do, years ago. I think it was 2011 or 12. I was actually living in Kona, Hawaii at the time, and I had, just for my website, I didn't have a podcast. I was doing a series on my website called the Masters of the Law of Attraction, and you and I got on the smartphone and we did a little interview. So the very first episode of this podcast, I produced, I was working at a local public radio station here, and I produced an hour-long pilot for this that was supposed to be on the radio on NPR. It ended up not being on, and we had an excerpt of that one interview, about 10 minutes of you in there, and it's actually one of my most popular episodes, so I made a podcast out of it. So, and then again, you were one of my earlier episodes, I think episode number 6 out of the 28 I have on so far. This is 29. And James, it's still one of my most top 10, actually, I think it's around number 6 most popular of all my shows. So thank you for coming back on.
Certainly, certainly.
Well, let's dive right in here. Let's go right into your most famous book about attracting money using mind power. So how do you attract financial abundance using mind power? How did you come to realize this and to teach it?
Right. I came to California more than 40 years ago. I was 19 years old. Within my first few years, I started running into my first ever books on spirituality, metaphysics, mind power, law of attraction type teachings. And Think and Grow Rich was one of the early ones. I immediately knew that this was true. Like, I didn't even have to try it out first, because I had always felt like there was something missing that was really super important, but nobody knew, like nobody was talking about it. And like I was always, even as a kid, like, what's missing? Quite right. And when I started reading that information, which is basically that we're spiritual beings and that we're projecting or creating our reality as we go along, I knew that was the missing piece that I had intuitively felt was missing from life and our understanding of life, but that I had never, run across and had articulated to me in the English language, so that I could understand conceptually what I was feeling intuitively. And this subject gripped me. I started teaching after a while in New Age bookstores around San Diego County and over in Sedona, Arizona for a while. And one of the things I would teach is the mind power money connection, because that was always one of my greatest needs. And but I would get a recurring theme, and that is that people would ask me, why does this not work for money? It's worked for me for, my job or my relationship or whatever. I use visualization and now I have my perfect home, but it doesn't seem to work for money. And I knew that it did work for money. I had used it for money. I was in the active process of using it for money. And so I did get the idea of eventually to write a book that would address that specific subject, which is the law of attraction / mind power, specifically related to attracting money. I wanted it to be like no other book that was ever written, and it is. There is not, if you look at it just logistically and how it's set up, there's not another book out there like that. It's so simple, yet it's so short and metered, and every chapter is the same length, 4 pages, and one of those being just the title page, but yet it's very well researched. I read hundreds of books in the process of writing it. I quote 160 other authors, other separate books by 160 separate authors in the book. It's been like 13 years now. It's still amazing how fast the time flies from when I first published that. And I've never looked back since then.
Well, but if I remember, you actually took a pretty long time to write this short book. You kept refining it and refining it, right? How long was it?
Right. About 9 years.
Wow.
Yeah, from when I wrote down my first idea for a title and subtitle, my first few pages of notes or whatever, 9 long years. But remember, I moved around a lot. In that time, I moved between states. I had a lot of life stuff to deal with. I read hundreds of books, most of which I owned, and a lot I got from the library. I collected up hundreds of quotes, whittled it down to the 160 quotes that I used. So it was a huge endeavor, which is amazing because you can read the book in, a sitting or two.
Yeah, right.
And since then, as you know, I've written books in 6 days, 4 days. I even have one book, the book on divine order, that I wrote in 1 day. But the first book took me 9 years. That was my process. But remember, I didn't have a computer. I didn't know how to type. I had to get a typing book from the library and practice on my old brother word processor. Eventually, I had to go from the whole book from the word processing. I had to go from on paper and type it all back into the computer. I had to learn the computer. It was just a huge learning curve, learning experience, and the book started out longer. It was a page longer than it is. Like right now, every chapter of the 20 chapters has that 1 page of concepts and counsel. Well, that was 2 pages. And so that was another 20 pages. And I really wanted to just make this thing so tight. You've read the book and you know that you sit down and it's just, bam, bam, bam. It's just concise, to the point. It pulls no punches. It makes no apologies. It doesn't hedge its bets. And so that was a big process. People wouldn't realize how much work it takes to get 2 full pages, into 1 full page and not leave anything out that you had in the 2 pages.
Yeah.
But just to make everything more powerful, succinct, and just the English language, getting concise with it. And then to do that 20 times over. So, just that process. But the whole book was a real learning experience too. A lot of what I learned is a lot of what I know about writing, I learned from writing that first book, really. And then I've been able to carry all those lessons with me from there on out.
What I love about Attract Money Using Mind Power, that the book we're talking about that you wrote, it's right in alignment with what I teach about the law of attraction. Law of attraction is not complex. It's simple. Ask, it's a given, and then you have to allow yourself to receive it, which is the hardest part. It's beautiful, but would you care to delve a little bit deeper in why money in particular is such a deep-seated paradigm of lack in most of the people in the world?
Right. There's a lot of reasons for that. One is the individual themselves, self-image. We have different programs from childhood or wherever where we have come to believe that we are not fully worthy, that there's something wrong with us, that we're not valuable, therefore we should not have a lot that's valuable. So we discount our own value, and therefore we don't believe we deserve to have a lot of things that you would think a person of value deserves to have. So that's a big part of it, and I do cover it in the chapter titled Self-Image. A lot of it is there's just so much programming and misconceptions and misunderstandings about money. We think that, for instance, rich people are bad people, right? They've had to go against moral standards and whatnot to be able to get a lot of money. And of course, that's true in some cases, not in all cases, maybe in many cases, but again, not in all. And that it's not, rich people aren't spiritual. And I love that people think if the poorer I am, then the more spiritual I am, And when people tell me that they don't care about money or they're spiritual, therefore they can't do this process, I like to, especially if I know a little bit about them or can learn a little bit about them, I like to ask them if things like, is being able to feed your child spiritual? Like if you have enough money to do that in the best way with the best quality food and all of that, and that costs a lot of money. Now, if you go out and get that money, that's not spiritual. Or having a good, safe vehicle to drive the kids to, school in, live in a safe neighborhood where you can feel fairly safe when the children are outside of the house and out of your sight. Medical care or alternatives to modern medicine, the best that you can find based on your understanding for yourself and your children. Everything, or, family members, significant other, whatever. Everything costs money. Everything costs really a lot of money. I mean, when you just look at, we talked recently about just children, they're growing. they need new shoes at intervals. Shoes are very expensive, right? And it can cost a parent a half a day's pay for a pair of shoes.
Yep.
And then
$150 for a new pair of shoes.
Right. And then there's socks and underwear and jackets and coats and hats. And that's not even, we're not even talking about feeding the kid yet. So if you have a child, I mean, any parent out there knows. But any person, even if they're just a single person, to keep a roof over your head, food in the fridge, live in a safe place, have a decent vehicle to drive around in, even if you're frugal, even if you have very simple basic tastes, even if you keep everything simple and small, it's still expensive to live. And so I've never heard an argument yet that would make me think, you know what? Yeah, using your mind to attract money is not spiritual. No. And I've heard, I can't even count how many people have given me their take on it. And I think that when we come out of the conversation, and sometimes I say conversation, sometimes that's back and forth in a few emails or in a public forum in the comments to something I posted or whatever, I think that I convert most of those people. I just think that what I'm saying regarding it is totally spiritual and okay spiritually to want a lot of money and to use your mind and your God-given spiritual ability to attract that money. The argument makes so much sense that once I really get to fully, and I just mean just a few of the main points like I've done now. I don't mean I have to talk to someone for an hour. They're like, yeah, my kid needs shoes, and they get off that kick, that high horse that, oh, I'm too spiritual to worry about money. I feel sorry for those people because a lot of them never get off that high horse because they don't get to hear my side of the story. And therefore they're in lack and their children are in lack and everything else. So it doesn't hold any water. But beyond all of that, and now we've got the media, they vilify wealth, they vilify rich people. We have all of these misunderstandings like there's only so much to go around. Therefore, if I have more than my fair share, other people are going to have less. Whereas the opposite is true. The more I have, the more I can spend and share and donate and whatever. So the more I have, the more others have, not the less. So any of the arguments that you hear against attracting money and having a lot of money are not valid. Now, I'm not saying none of them are true, like, bad people, rich people are bad. There are some bad rich people. They get their money in totally unscrupulous ways that harm others. But that doesn't mean the money itself is bad. That doesn't mean the large amounts of money are bad. What's bad is how they go about getting it and what they do with it when they get it. But money itself is good. And once we get past all of this, work on our self-image a little if that's an issue so that we know that we have value and that we deserve to have more, then it's logistical. It's just putting the mechanisms that are already inherent within us and our spiritual and mental abilities into play for the specific purpose of attracting more money into our lives.
Well, I wondered if you would allow me for a moment to go back and put the focus on you. You actually are living proof that you can use mind power to attract money in your life. Your story, if you would care to relate, I think you had a job that wasn't paying very well. And how did that all come about? And how did you attract money into your own life?
Certainly. Well, it is quite a story, right? Here I am. I'm working on how to attract money using mind power for 8 years by this point. On and off, a lot of off, but on and off. And I'm 48 years old, and I'm working a low-paying job as a caregiver for a developmentally disabled senior man in his home. And I would ride my bicycle across town to this job. And we were, as a household, $50,000 in credit card debt because I was the only wage earner in the house, and we had been spending more than I was earning for quite a while. So that is how that got unbalanced. And you turn around and it doesn't take long. People think $50,000, that's a lot of money. Well, not really. I mean, when you're trying to live, when you're paying rent and all these other things, number one, but number two, remember, as soon as you start borrowing money from the cards, then it's a slippery slope because now not only do you have to borrow every month all that you need to make up for what you're not making, but you're spending. But now you also have to borrow to pay the cards. And that gets, larger and larger. But anyway, I had this spiritual epiphany, and basically I knew that if I was ever going to live my dream, which is to be a self-help author, to stay at home and write, and to never have to leave the house to do anything that I wouldn't do for free, in other words, just because I love doing it, then I was going to have to just do it. And it was the oddest thing, but I knew absolutely inside that it was the right decision for me. So $50,000 in credit card debt, going deeper in each month, borrowing from the cards to live and to pay the cards, I quit my job. I went into silence from that moment that I made the decision. I didn't talk for the next 10 days. I quit my job, obviously. Someone else had to make the phone call for me. And I just started working on the book, How to Attract Money Using Mind Power, pulling it together. I remember at that time is during the time when I was going from that 2-page concepts and counsel down to the 1. And I was also doing everything. So I was, doing my affirmations, my visualization, and thinking as if, thinking in result. I was just doing everything I was writing about, totally immersed in it. And within 3 months of quitting my job, I attracted 2 6-figure windfalls into the house.
Wow.
And I have never, now that's 13 years ago. I can't say that money has carried me for 13 years, but I can say that I've had other miracles, and that, certainly the books themselves haven't, made me rich. I mean, it's, books, you sell books, the books make money, but there's expenses involved and everything else. Without the mind power part of it, without the windfalls, without the seeming gifts out of nowhere, I might have been back to a job by now, but I'm not. Here I am 13 years later. I made that promise to myself and to my household. I said, none of us will ever have to work a job again. We can figure out, we are spiritual beings. We have these very powerful minds. We're in a world where we have modern technology. There's internet, email, telephones, Skype, whatever it is. All these, I don't know if Skype was around yet. I didn't even know how to use my computer yet. But if this stuff works, then what all the mystics have been saying, right, all the great teachers, if this stuff works, then we should be able to stay home right here in our house, wherever our home may be at the time, and never have to go out there for anything, never have to chase everything, never have to go and get anything, but simply sit here with whatever electronic connections we have to the world and attract everything to us. And that's what we've been doing. That's what I've been doing for 13 years now, and going strong, and never looked back. But I like to hasten to tell people that another chapter in the book is act as if, and that's exactly what I did.
I was going to say that is one of the key law of attraction processes, act as.
Exactly. So I wanted to be a self-help author. And for a long time, I thought, well, and stay home and do just that. And for a long time, I was under the delusion that I had to have the money to be able to do that. And when I had that epiphany, I thought, no, I can be doing this starting tomorrow. All I have to do is stop going. All I have to do is quit my job. And I will be living my dream for the rest of today. And starting tomorrow, I will be a self-help author, staying at home, doing my writing. And I didn't have the money. But the universe jumped in, and within 3 months brought me all kinds of money, months and months before the book was even published. I would have thought, well, I'm going to publish the book and it's going to be a big bestseller and all this. But that's, I had the end result in mind, which was have enough to stay home and to do to live my dream. The universe had its own ideas about how to bring that money to me in ways I never could have thought of. And it always works out like that. That's another solid foundational concept and principle of metaphysics, law of attraction, is to really program in to the universe and to our own subconscious minds the end result we want, but not get all worked up and mentally run ourselves into the ground trying to figure out how. The how will be shown. We need to figure out what and why, And then the how takes care of itself. And it's proven itself so many times. Another time, many years before that, $10,000 in credit card debt, one simple affirmation, 6 weeks later, received a gift for the exact amount of $10,000, a gift. So it really worked. And that's another example of, I couldn't have figured out the way. I didn't know how this could happen, but I did that affirmation that at that time we were 10,000 in credit card debt, that all of our credit cards were completely paid off. I had that affirmation, and that came about. So this stuff really, really works. It's mind changing, it's game changing, it's bank account changing. And we just need to learn a few principles, have some faith, and work the process. If we work it, it works for us.
And wherever you are in the world and you're watching or listening to this podcast with James Goy Jr., author of Attract Money Using Mind Power, his book is available in a number of languages. So you may be able to pick it up, I think, 4 or 5 different languages.
Right. I can't confirm Hindi. The Indian publisher bought the rights for Hindi, but I've never been able to get a copy. I have a copy of their English version. And then there are 3 definite foreign language editions. A publisher in Mexico put out one in Spanish. A publisher in Lebanon put one out in Arabic. And a publisher in Italy put one out in Italian. And that was a big accomplishment for an independently published book. I'm my own author. I'm an independent author and publisher. At the time, I went through another company that helped me with that, but now I've taken it all on myself. But that was an accomplishment that I really felt good about. Not only that I could share that knowledge in other languages and really help other people and all, but just the validation from mainstream publishers in other countries that the book had enough value that they would pay me for the right to print it in their language. And that gave me a lot of confidence early on that I was on the right track.
One of my favorite lines with the law of attraction is the law of attraction. When you're trying to visualize and affirm that which you want to manifest in your life, the law of attraction is now unfolding and orchestrating all that needs to happen to bring this into my life. And it's just, when I think of that, it's just a beautiful concept. And you just have to allow it to flow in your life. And you are a beautiful example of that. I mean, James, what you have done is phenomenal, and continue to do your positive influence. So we're going to keep rolling here. I do want to get into your new book, The New Normal. And so, of course, that is about the pandemic going on right now, and the world seems to be in a chaotic mess. I mean, it doesn't seem, it is in a chaotic mess right now. What do you think are the factors that have caused this? And from your perspective as a spiritualist, a metaphysician, how do we get ourselves out of this right now? Help.
Right. Well, the way out is the same way we came in. We have to go through the same door. You know, everything that we see in our so-called material world, the quantum physicists have proven that it's not physical at all. It's not material. We know this. It's a scientific fact. This isn't conjecture. This isn't, mystical, fluff or something. It's scientific fact. Everything that we experience in life, individually and collectively, is spiritually and mentally and emotionally formed. In other words, there's an energy, there's a foundation under all of it. And so the foundation that's under everything we're going through right now is physical, spiritual, emotional, mental. Those are the building blocks. I mean, there's no other way. You can't say, yeah, well, this is different. This is, whatever, this virus. No, there is, the deeper you get in, you might start losing some people. But if you really sit down and talk to someone who's really tuned into reality, like people ask, there's a camp of people who believe wholeheartedly that this virus is real, right? There's another camp that believe that this is being blown way out of proportion. It's nothing different than the common flu, but there's, political engines in play and other, control fact, whatever. Everybody's got their story. And so from here, in from our material minds as human beings living in a material world, we're going to sit and we're going to think, okay, well, which one of these is true? And the further we start pulling out from it and looking at it holistically, first of all, we see it's not even real, right? We're smack dab in the middle of a dream, and we're discussing which part of the dream is actually true. Well, none of the dream is true, but yet as a dream character within the dream, one of those must be true, but really they're both true. Like in quantum physics, we know that experiments turn out based on what the experimenter how they set it up and what they look for. And I'm not a quantum physicist, obviously. I've got a lot of books on the subject, and I've read a lot about it. And it's just validated what the mystical and spiritual teachers have been teaching all along. So we got into this mess spiritually and mentally and emotionally, and we've created this mess just like we've created the world, which, by the way, folks, wasn't all that great before March or whatever. It's not that all of a sudden everything's gone downhill. Everything was already shaky. It's not that all of a sudden the economy has been destroyed. No, the economy was teetering, is basically an illusion to begin with. Everything we thought about it was not true. There was no strong foundation under any of it. And I'm not an economist either, so I don't talk about all that. But the people who are, and who look about, since the crash of 2008 and all the money got pumped in, we should have had a recession, right? We had all these bubbles, but we won't let what's supposed to happen. It's like if our body is trying to cleanse, and we keep putting drugs in it to mask the symptoms, then we get sicker and sicker, even though we feel okay and we don't go down. Just look at the simple cold, contact cold tablet or something that you take. All of a sudden, oh, I'm not sniffling it. That's what we've basically done. Okay, so a lot of undesirable things are happening, but a lot of good things are happening too. But all of that doesn't matter, because I'm just as a human being saying, oh, that's bad. Well, I don't really say this is good and that's bad. Because that's just, a human being doesn't really know. Like, if we're not tuned into a higher part of ourselves, we don't have the capacity to sit and judge. Oh, this is good, that's bad, she's nice, he's not. That's just garbage. That's just a physical human mind that thinks it knows something. But when we really start to understand that everything is just what it is, it's the only thing it could be based on everything that came before and led up to it, because nothing just happens. There are no accidents. There's cause and effect. And so to rail against it, to argue about it or to complain about it is not really productive. So I don't make judgment calls about good or bad, but I do make judgment calls on desirable or undesirable, pleasant or unpleasant. So as human beings, we can say, I like this or I don't like this. And we can use our minds and our spiritual power to attract into our own lives and as a whole, those things that we find more pleasant and in line with peace and harmony. So it's all a spiritual proposition. And I think that even some students of metaphysics, mind power, law of attraction, when something like this happens, or a major upheaval and disaster in their own personal life, or a regional thing like an earthquake or whatever, or a planetary thing like this epidemic, so-called epidemic, all of a sudden they seem to forget that everything's an illusion. They seem to forget that everything is mind. They seem to forget basic core spiritual teachings like the observer and the observed, and quantum physical teachings. The observer and the observed are not separate.
Mm-hmm.
the act of observation in and of itself has an effect. So we're not just observing what's going on, we're affecting everything that we observe by how we interpret and judge it. And so when we start getting those lessons and understandings more and more, we realize that this is really a spiritual proposition. This is a spiritual challenge more than anything else. And that's the best way to approach it. Now, everyone and everything has its place. So if someone is compelled to go out into the streets and carry a sign, that's good for them. If someone else is compelled to stay home and to collect themselves and to focus their energy and to send out vibrations for how they want things to be, to recognize that all of the turmoil is actually in divine order at the moment, and is all it could be based on everything that led up to it. So there's no reason to say, I wish this wasn't like this, because that's just wasted energy. There are different ways to approach this thing that we're in the middle of, and everyone has their place, and no one is right and no one is wrong. But the way some people are approaching it and what they would like to see is going to lead to more unpleasantness for humanity as a whole. And the way another camp would like to proceed is going to lead to more harmony and pleasant circumstances. But we just look at it for what it is, with no emotion involved, and know that each of us as individuals has more power than we have ever imagined to affect the whole organism of which we are a part and can never be separated. Every thought and feeling and image that we have affects the whole. We know this scientifically, spiritually, metaphysically, mystically. It's just the way it is. And so this is a battle that's taking place within us, not outside of us. And that's where something like this needs to be addressed for the most part.
Well, I think what you're saying here, really what you're saying is not new. You're reflecting what spiritual icons for all human history have said, but we have almost 8 billion people on the planet now whose credo is, I'll believe it when I see it. And so when we talk from this avenue, we're living in an illusion right now. Most of those people have no clue on it. I think one time in our last interview we did a couple years ago, you said much of the world qualifies as insane. And I read that's actually stated in A Course in Miracles. The world's thinking is upside down from right-minded thinking. So if this is the truth, we have a whole planet that basically doesn't really understand what you're talking about, even though it's nothing new and it's been taught. How can we apply it practically right now to get ourselves out of this?
Right. Well, what we're already doing mentally as individuals is part of it. What you and I are doing today, where we're conversing, we're sharing these thoughts in a forum which other people can find and listen to and resonate with and make distinctions in their own minds. That's a big part of it. A problem today that we have is that if you get too specific, like if you attack the wrong people, we're starting to see more and more now that your platform will be shut down. Right?
Yes,
I mean,
right.
How many of us have received, I have received multiple, since this whole pandemic thing started, I have received multiple videos from people, like in a message on Facebook or something. And I have learned, because of the nature of these, to watch them right away.
Right.
If I wait a day,
yeah,
it's inevitable. I got this
gone.
Screen, this screen is burned into my head. I'm tired of seeing it from YouTube. This video is no longer available. And I'm like, oh, so now I don't waste time. But it's not just YouTube. I mean, for whatever reasons, there is, it's harder today for people to share alternate views to the mainstream or the power structure views. But that's okay. It's just more of a spiritual challenge. It's just more that we need to address, understand, and move ahead. And maybe, censorship, it's not good, it's not pleasant or whatever, but maybe there's a little bit of a spiritual teaching in there, in that you're going around just the wrong way. In other words, you're really, really believing in all of this darkness. And so you're fighting it, and you're calling it out, and you're pointing at it, and you're drawing everyone's else attention to it. Well, okay, we could say on one level that that's a good thing, but we can also understand metaphysically and spiritually that that can actually help to make the thing we're so-called fighting against even stronger, because we are feeding all of our energy into it and drawing a lot of other people's energy to it, and we're making it what? More and more real.
Classic law of attraction right there.
Right, exactly. So, and I'm not saying people shouldn't be doing that either, because everything's in divine order. Everyone has their part to play, and it's like we're in a movie theater. We're watching this movie up on the screen, and we're actors in it, but we're also spectators in the audience, and we have forgotten, as the actor in the movie, as a spectator watching it, we've forgotten one very important little detail, and that is that it is a movie, that we are actors. It's like an actor that goes in a movie and loses their mind and completely believes that this is all real. It's like someone who goes into the movie theater and sits there and looks up at the big screen and forgets that they're in a movie theater. And they actually think that, this is life and death. It's what we're seeing is what is. And life is not like that. And so we need to get just more and more spiritually in tune with reality, which is nothing like we think it is from our human minds. Our strictly from our human minds, we cannot really appreciate and understand the nature of true reality. But as we begin to integrate more and more with, you can call it your higher self, you can call it the universe at large, or God force, whatever you want to call it, as we become more and more a part of that, and in alignment with that, and in harmony with that, then we start to have more and more of the insight, which goes far beyond that of a mere mortal human being with a mere physical human brain. The human brain itself cannot comprehend a lot of this, and indeed, some of us, the most enlightened people around, they're not enlightened in their human brain. It's their mind, the mind they already had before they had this physical body, that can see and understand these concepts and make these distinctions. It's a very spiritual proposition.
Well, what you're saying is truly some beautiful, deep, wise advice and teaching. And James, I love your aspect of teaching a spirituality and how it applies to all this. I actually want to read a couple quotes, not real long ones, from your books. This one is from your book, The Supernatural Power of Thought, which I mentioned earlier is one of my favorites. And you write in this, you see, the average person is completely misinformed about the true nature of material reality and the foundation of the laws of nature. Nothing is as it seems to the human senses or the human mind. Nothing. If you want to break into a deeper level of power, start by sincerely considering the concept that everything you think you know is absolutely wrong. And with that, also from your newest book, you have, this is actually just before chapter 20 from The New Normal, you say, we are not sufficiently cognizant of our spiritual identity and power, and thus are highly vulnerable to negative consequences due to the weaknesses in our physical security and deficits in our sense of self. And what would be the one basic solution to this one basic problem is not being sufficiently cognizant of our spiritual identity and power. It would be to discover the reality of our true spiritual identities and thus be better able to access our true spiritual power so that we can greatly decrease the potential negative effects of human insecurity in all forms. And that is just some great deep stuff. Thank you for that, James. I really appreciate it.
Certainly. Thank you for reading that. Yeah, I haven't read, especially the Supernatural Power of Thought. I haven't read that for a very long time. And I know I would recognize it as mine if you were reading it, even if you didn't tell me.
Yeah.
But if I didn't know it was mine, I would have thought, hey, that's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
well, it's great. And I think that is the big challenge during this time of the crazy stuff going on in the world is I know we've stated it many times, but this is not real, but we're living it. So we have to deal with it in a way spiritually powerful and positive. I don't know how else to put it. You've done a good job with it.
yeah. Any other thing, and we're basically swimming upstream. If we face the picture of life at its own level and try to wrestle it at ground level to what we want it to be, that's going to be a long and fierce struggle, and we're not going to win that struggle.
Mm-hmm. How can people get copies of The New Normal? What's the full title of that? The New Normal?
Yeah, let me
semicolon, colon.
Yep, hold it up here.
A spiritual.
The New Normal. Can they see it? The spiritual, the physical, and common sense take on the 2020 coronavirus emergency and its after effects.
And they can get that on Amazon, and it's down. I think I downloaded it as an ebook.
Right. So it's a physical book, as you can see right here, and it's also on Kindle and many other platforms, Barnes and Noble, and everywhere. The downloadable version, Kindle and Apple books and all that, is actually free. So if anybody wants to read that book, and I hope everyone reads that book, it's free on Amazon and all of these other platforms. You just download it basically and read it to your phone, your computer, whatever. If you don't have a Kindle apparatus, you can simply download the free Kindle reading app from Amazon. Yeah, for your phone. I have it on my computer for your phone, your computer. Yeah, and more of my books are actually Supernatural Power of Thought is available for free. Where Power of Functioning available for free, and then there's a bunch more that I'm in the process of making free. These are tough times for people. Financially, people need some kind of insight or help spiritually, and so look up my books, my name, and then all my books come up on any of these platforms. And in the short term here, I'm working on basically, I'll tell you, all of my books, Carl, are going to be free in digital format in the very near future. I'm already working on that process.
Wow.
And the only one that you might find that you would pay for is Attract Money Forever, like on Amazon and other places. But that book is free in a PDF on my website if you sign up for my free monthly zine. So basically, they're not all in place yet. You'll still see prices on some of them.
Yeah.
But check back if one of the books you want is not free yet for your audience. It will be soon. So you'll be able to read any of my books without any financial barriers in the way. And of course, if you want the print book, they're available as well. They're very inexpensive, as you know. So there's no barriers. If someone thinks I have something to say that can help them, then I just want them to be able to have that. These are tough times we're in, and I think my books can help in a lot of ways, and I really want people to have them. And of course, they can sign up for my free monthly Mind, Power, and Money e-zine also.
I get it.
Okay, good. Yeah, they can do that on my website as well.
Well, James, that is so generous of you, and I really advise anybody watching or listening to go ahead and do so. Download James's books. I'm kind of saved. We've got some time left here before we have to conclude here, but I kind of save this towards the end. And I recently saw another podcast that you did an interview on it, and you talked quite a bit about this. So, in the intro here, we talked about, your natural abilities as an advanced mind power practitioner, but an astral traveler, a lucid dreamer. You had encounters with angels and demons and things. I mean, how does that play into your life? I mean, you personally told me a couple of stories. I mean, do you ever get scared, or do you just integrate it and understand that this is just a dream?
Yeah, that's a really good question. In certain situations, the human part of you is gonna get nervous, is gonna have trepidation, is going to initially the knee-jerk reaction could be fear. But if you just marshal up your energies and your attention and say, okay, here's the situation, and now here's what I need to do. As far as out of body and experiences, those started when I was, between 5 and 6.5 years old. I remember the house we were living in when I would routinely find myself out of my body in my room at night, terrified, but I wouldn't know I was dreaming. And there was a lot of fear. I've been involved in one time in the middle of the desert, in the middle of the night, and our car was dead. Our car went dead. We were traveling between states, and I made the bonehead move of getting off of the interstate because this other line on the map looked like a more straight line. Well, but long story short, me and my traveling companion Kathy, we knew that there was something heading for us, like we could both feel it. So here we are. We hadn't seen any cars in either direction. A little 2-lane highway, and literally in the middle of the desert, literally in the middle of the night. And when we realized that we were in trouble, like something was coming, it was going to be there very soon. And so that's, but remember now, fear is not always a negative thing. Fear also serves the purpose of a warning. It's like pain. Right. We don't like pain. It's not pleasant, but it tells us to move our hand away from the flame or whatever. Well, fear, we don't like it, it's not pleasant, but initially when we have that animal instinct and emotion, it's warning us that there's something to be afraid of. In other words, something that could potentially cause us harm. And that's one of the situations where I used mind power basically to start the car. The car was absolutely dead, electrically, everything else, and I told Kathy, first we got out and we looked under the hood, and I looked at her after I put the hood down because I don't know anything about cars. I just saw everything looked okay and there was no smoke or anything. And I said, do you feel that? And I was talking about what was heading for us. And she didn't answer, but she nodded yes. And then I said, we are getting in that car and I am turning that key and we are driving out of here. A dead car that we both knew, wasn't going anywhere. And we got in the car, we turned the key, I turned the key, and we drove that car away.
It started right up, huh?
It started right up. There's other times when I've used mind power. One time somebody was reaching for a gun that was in a book bag, and their hand literally was shaking in the air like this, trying to reach for the bag. Not that I thought with mind power that their hand's going to shake in the air and they can't get the gun, but I was putting in the end result, which this just is not going to happen. This cannot happen. I will not accept this. I am mentally and spiritually stronger than allowing something like this to happen. And I had 2 other people with me whose lives were in jeopardy, and safety and freedom. And there's so many other things. I did participate in an exorcism in Sedona, Arizona, and I've had other run-ins with demonic forces. I remember here in San Diego one time, I came across a woman who was demon possessed, and this thing, I was in my 20s at the time, and this thing actually got into me, and it was like a battle for like a week to finally get rid of it, and I didn't do it alone. I had help. And yeah, you get afraid at times, and I didn't have a really great understanding back then of all the things I know now. But I've been lucid dreaming. I first read my first book about it sometime in the 90s, I think. many, many years ago. And the first night I had my first lucid dream, which is basically becoming aware in the dream that you're dreaming. And now I just do it spontaneously. I get out of my body spontaneously. I astral travel to other, you want to call them dimensions or alternate, universes. Mm-hmm. I do all of that. So I'm in and out of my body. We got dead. Kathy's a natural born medium, so we've got dead people around here all the time that we've known. They stop in. Her mother was here.
Hey, hi, how you doing?
Her mother was here today, and it's just normal. So the more, but for anyone, the more spiritual and open and informed you become, the more all of the barriers start breaking down. There's no barriers between us and the other side, or this universe, an alternate parallel universe. It's all right there. It's all energy. And when you learn to work your own dial, you can tune into this kind of, you can tune into all of these different spectrums of energy.
Well, and that brings me to that, because I have none of these abilities that you talk about. I've never had. I mean, if I have, it's been very minimal, and I can hardly even remember. But can other people who have many of the same gifts that you do, how can they help use them to help shape and better their life for themselves and those around them? It's a unique gift, and exactly that. How can they use them to create a better life?
Right. Well, remember now we're talking about many different things. Like some people are really good, proficient lucid dreamers, yet they don't know anything about attracting. They don't know anything about visualization, right? Other people can be spontaneously finding themselves out of their bodies, but yet they never even heard of lucid dreaming. Like I never did lucid dreaming until I heard about it. And then I just started doing it. And now there's a lot of ways to increase and induce, lucid dreams, increase the frequency and all. But if I don't do anything, I have, a couple of months just, spontaneously. They just happen. And so there's many different, and certainly using mind power and attracting divine intervention, like a very bad motorcycle accident I was in when I was much younger, and other times I've been hit by a car as a child, and miraculous things happened where I should have been dead, and people thought I was dead, and a priest was leaning over me, and I was barely scratched after getting hit by a car and flying through the air and all that.
I think I remember you telling me this story.
Yeah. So, but these are all different things. Like, for instance, somebody might have had one or more divine intervention experiences, right? They almost drowned and they felt someone pushing them, carrying them towards the shore, but yet they don't know anything about the law of attraction, never had a lucid dream. They don't know about, any of this other stuff. So they're all different things, but each and every one of these areas that I've become, used to really, are each one can empower us to live our lives, to be more aware. And just remember, as human beings, we really, technically speaking, we don't have to do anything. Everyone benefits from our increased understanding. Everyone, because we're all part of the one mind. There is no separation in reality. And so, but then obviously, if we go out and hand a homeless person $1 or something, that's a physical thing. We can also do physical things, but we don't have to. We can be literally in a cave, in a Himalayan cave or something, and we can be helping everyone. And it's based on us. We cannot lift our own consciousness without, to some degree, it will be imperceptible to the 8 billion people almost, but to some degree, we're lifting everyone as we lift ourselves. And so all of these areas, we talked about health. I think it was off camera. Another very important thing, I do a lot of fasting. Right now, I've been eating only every other day. I did that for a whole year one time. I've done a lot of fasting, long periods of time as a vegetarian, 90 days as a strict fruitarian, fruit only, vegan for years at a time, time restricted eating, intermittent fasting, 6-day water fast, you name it. So it's all part of the soup, right? It's health, it's mental, it's spiritual, it's emotional. It's everything we can do and know inside our bodies and that which we can know and do outside of our bodies. And we just start where we are. We move towards what interests us. And as we grow in any of these areas, our potential to grow in all of the areas increases. But we need to become aware of these other possibilities and put our attention on them. And then we can excel in those areas just as we can excel in any of these other areas.
Oh man, James, I am so glad you came on the show today, because what you talk about is just so beautiful. Anybody watching and listening to this cannot help but gain some beautiful new perspective and understanding and confirmation of what they already knew. And we're just about out of time here. Like I said, I try to keep this to about an hour, and I want to just say to our viewers and listeners, my favorite time with James was about 8 years ago. I happened to be through San Diego twice within 6 months on one of my forays out to Hawaii and back. And James and I, within 6 month period, both times I was in town, we met at the end of the Ocean Beach Pier at sunrise, and we had a couple hour-long talks and chats that I still savor to this day, and I really appreciate that we did that and had the chance to do one-on-ones, Jane. That was one of my favorite times, man. I thank you.
Yeah, that was definitely fun. Yeah, those are good times. That's a long pier, right? Ocean Beach Pier.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, that's a long one, and yeah.
Well, I'll have to come back out again, and maybe we can do that one more time. But so, folks, we've been talking to author James Goy Jr. That's G-O-I, and you have a website, jamesgoyjr.com, right? People can go to that.
That's right, James, GOIJR.com.
And I don't think you don't have a Facebook page. Yeah, you do have a Facebook.
Certainly, yeah, Facebook, Twitter, and some of the others, but I'm not too active on the others.
Yeah. Well, I highly suggest people checking him out, and it's been an absolute blast talking to James. I know we could probably go to the end of the pier and talk for another few hours. So thank you, James. Much love and light to you, brother. Namaste, and stay healthy and abundant.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you. All the same to you, and thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
This has been another episode of World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment, with me, your host, Carl Gruber, a certified law of attraction life coach. I welcome you to tune in to each and every episode of this podcast, World Awakenings, as we open your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that all of the world's population is now, more than ever, awakening to the truth of all things metaphysical and spiritual, and just how much they play an all-important role in our moment-to-moment, everyday life. Much love and light to you, my friend. Thank you for tuning in.